once there was a mouse. He was a busy mouse, searching everywhere, touching his whiskers to the grass and looking. He was busy as all mice are, busy with mice things. But once in a while, he would hear an odd sound. He would lift his head, squinting hard to see, his whiskers wiggling in the air, and he would wonder. One day he scurried up to a fellow mouse and asked him, "It's you, Destin?
Do you hear a roaring in your ears, my brother?"
No, no, I hear nothing. I am busy now. Talk to me later.
He asked another mouse the same question, and the mouse looked at him strangely. Still you, Diana.
Are you foolish in your head? What sound?
And he slipped into a hole in a fallen cottonwood tree. Little Mouse shrugged his whiskers and busied himself again, determined to forget the whole matter. But there was that roaring again. It was faint, very faint, but it was there. One day he decided to investigate the sound just a little. Leaving the other busy mice, he scurried a little way and listened again. There it was. He was listening hard when suddenly someone said,
Am I the voice?
let's see. Oh, it's the raccoon. Who's raccoon? We don't have a raccoon. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, little brother.
And the mouse almost jumped right out of his skin. He arched his back and tail and was about to run.
Hello. It is I, Brother Raccoon.
And sure enough, it was.
What are you doing here all by yourself, little brother?
Asked the raccoon. The mouse blushed and put his nose almost to the ground. Mouse?
Mouse.
That's you, Destin. I hear a roaring.
I hear a roaring in my ears and I'm investigating it.
A roaring in your ears?
Replied Raccoon as he sat down with him.
What you hear, little brother, is the river.
The river?
Mouse asked curiously.
What is a river?
Walk with me and I will show you the river,
Raccoon said. Little Mouse was terribly afraid, but he was determined to find out once and for all about the roaring.
I can return to my work
He
after
thought.
this thing is settled, and possibly this thing may aid me in all my busy examining and collecting. And my brothers all said it was nothing. I will show them. I will ask Raccoon to return with me and I will have proof.
And then keep going.
All right, Raccoon, my brother,
said Mouse.
Lead on to the river. I will walk with you.
Little Mouse walked with Raccoon. His little heart was pounding in his breast. The raccoon was taking him upon strange paths, and Little Mouse smelled the scent of many things that had gone by his way. Many times he became so frightened he almost turned back. Finally, they came to the river. It was huge and breathtaking, deep and clear in places and murky in others. Little Mouse was unable to see across it because it was so great. It roared, it sang, cried, and thundered on its course. Little Mouse saw great and little pieces of the world carried away on its surface.
It is powerful,
Little Mouse said, fumbling for words. You're muted, Mary.
It is a great thing,
answered Raccoon.
But here, let me introduce you to a friend.
In a smoother, shallower place was a lily pad, bright and green. Sitting upon it was a frog, almost as green as the pad it sat on. The frog's white belly stood out clearly.
Hello, little brother. Welcome to the river.
Yeah.
I will leave you now.
cut in Raccoon.
But do not fear, little brother, for Frog will take care of you now.
And Raccoon left, looking along the riverbank for food that he might wash and eat. Little Mouse approached the water and looked into it. He saw a frightened mouse reflected there.
Who are you?
Little Mouse asked the reflection.
Are you not afraid of being that far out into the great river?
No,
Answered the
I am
frog.
I am not afraid. I have been given the gift from birth to live both above and within the river. When winter man comes and freezes this medicine, I cannot be seen. But all the while Thunderbird flies. I am here. To visit me, one must come when the world is green. I, my brother, am the keeper of the water.
Amazing.
Little Mouse said at last, fumbling for words.
Sorry. Would you like to have some medicine power?
Frog asked.
Medicine power? Me?
Asked Little Mouse.
Yes, yes, if it is possible.
Then crouch as low as you can, and then jump as high as you are able, and you will have your medicine.
Frog said. Little Mouse did as he was instructed. He crouched as low as he could and jumped. And when he did, his eyes saw the sacred mountains. Little Mouse could hardly believe his eyes, but there they were. But then he fell back to earth and he landed in the river. Little Mouse became frightened and scrambled back to the bank. He was wet and frightened nearly to death.
You have tricked me.
Little Mouse screamed at the frog.
Wait,
Said the frog.
you are not harmed. Do not let your fear and anger blind you. What did you see?
Mouse stammered.
I saw the sacred mountains.
And you have a new name.
Frog said.
It is Jumping Mouse.
Thank you, thank you.
Jumping Mouse said, and thanked him again.
I want to return to my people and tell them of this thing that has happened to me.
Go then.
Frog said.
Return to your people. It is easy to find them. Keep the sound of the medicine river to the back of your head. Go opposite to the sound, and you will find your brother mice.
Jumping Mouse returned to the world of mice, but he found disappointment. No one would listen to him. And because he was wet and had no way of explaining it because there had been no rain, many of the other mice were afraid of him. They believed he had been spat from the mouth of another animal that had tried to eat him. And they all knew that if he had not been food for the one who wanted him, then he must also be poison for them. Jumping Mouse lived again among his people, but he could not forget his vision of the sacred mountains. The memory burned in the mind and heart of Jumping Mouse, and one day he went to the edge of the place of mice and looked out onto the prairie. He looked up for eagles. The sky was full of many spots, each one an eagle. But he was determined to go to the sacred mountains. He gathered all of his courage and ran just as fast as he could onto the prairie. His little heart pounded with excitement and fear. He ran until he came to a stand of sage. He was resting and trying to catch his breath when he saw an old mouse. The patch of sage, old mouse, lived, let's see. Oh, I see. The patch of sage old mouse lived in was a haven for mice, seeds and many things to be busy with. Let's see, Diana, you might be muted,
Hello.
said old mouse.
Welcome.
Jumping Mouse was amazed. such a place and such a mouse.
You are
You are
truly a great mouse.
Jumping Mouse said with all the respect that he could find.
This is truly a wonderful place, and the eagles cannot see you here either.
Jumping Mouse said,
yes.
said Old Mouse.
And one can see all the beings of the prairie here, the buffalo, the antelope, the rabbit and coyote. One can see them all from here, know their names.
That is marvelous.
Jumping Mouse said.
Can you also see the river and the great mountains?
Yes and no.
Old Mouse said with conviction.
I know the great river, but I'm afraid that great mountains are only a myth. Forget your passion to see them and stay here with me. There's everything you want here, and it is a good place to be.
How can you say such a thing?
Thought Jumping Mouse.
The medicine of the sacred mountains is nothing one can forget. Thank you very much for the meal you have shared with me, Old Mouse, and also for sharing your great home.
Jumping Mouse said.
But I must seek the mountains.
You are a foolish mouse to leave when there is danger on the prairie. Just look up.
Old Mouse said with even more conviction.
See all those spots? They're eagles, and they will catch you.
It was hard for Jumping Mouse to leave, but he gathered his determination and ran hard again. The ground was rough, but he arched his tail and ran with all his might. He could feel the shadows of the spots upon his back as he ran, all those spots. Finally, he ran into a stand of choke cherries. Jumping Mouse could hardly believe his eyes. It was cool there and very spacious. There was water, cherries, and seeds to eat, grasses to gather for nests, holes to be explored, and many, many other busy things to do. And there were a great many things to gather. He was investigating his new domain when he heard very heavy breathing. He quickly investigated the sound and discovered its source. It was a great mound of hair with black horns. It was a great buffalo. Jumping Mouse could hardly believe the greatness of the being he saw lying there before him. He was so large that Jumping Mouse could have crawled into one of his great horns.
Such a magnificent being.
Thought Jumping Mouse, and he crept closer.
Hello, my brother,
said Jumping Mouse.
thank
Said Buffalo.
thank you for visiting me.
Hello, great being.
Said Jumping Mouse.
Why are you lying here?
I am sick and I am dying,
The buffalo said.
and my medicine has told me that only the eye of a mouse can heal me. But little brother, there is no such thing as a mouse.
Jumping Mouse was shocked.
One of my eyes?
He thought.
One of my tiny eyes?
He scurried back into the stand of choke cherries, but the breathing came harder and slower.
He will die.
Thought Jumping Mouse.
If I do not give him my eye, he is too great of a being to let die.
He went back to where the buffalo lay and spoke.
I am a mouse.
He said with a shaky voice.
And you, my brother, are a great being. I cannot let you die. I have 2 eyes, so you may have one of them.
The minute he said it, Jumping Mouse's eye flew out of his head, and the buffalo was made whole. The buffalo jumped to his feet, shaking Jumping Mouse's whole world.
Thank you, my little brother, said the buffalo. Oh, thank
Said
you,
the
my little
buffalo.
brother.
Uh-huh.
I know of your quest for the sacred mountains and of your visit to the river. You have given me life so that I may give away to the people. I will be your brother forever. Run under my belly, and I will take you right to the foot of the sacred mountains, and you need not fear the spots. The eagles cannot see you while you run under me. All they will see will be the back of a buffalo. I am of the prairie, and I will fall on you if I try to go up the mountains.
Little Mouse ran under the buffalo, secure and hidden from the spots. But with only one eye, it was frightening. The buffalo's great hooves shook the whole world each time he took a step. Finally, they came to a place and Buffalo stopped.
This is where I must leave you, little brother.
Said the buffalo.
Thank you very much.
Said Jumping Mouse.
But you know, it was very frightening running under you with only one eye. I was constantly in fear of your great earth-shaking hooves.
Your fear was for nothing.
Said Buffalo.
For my way of walking is the Sundance way, and I always know where my hoofs will fall. I now must return to the prairie, my brother. You can always find me there.
Jumping Mouse immediately began to investigate his new surroundings. There were even more things here than in the other place, busier things, and abundance of seeds and other things mice like. In his investigation of these things, suddenly he ran upon a gray wolf who was sitting there doing absolutely nothing.
Hello, Brother Wolf.
Jumping Mouse said. The wolf's ears came alert and his eyes shone.
Wolf, wolf, yes, that is what I am. I am a wolf.
But then his mind dimmed again, and it was not long before he sat quietly again, completely without memory as to who he was. Each time Jumping Mouse reminded him who he was, he became excited with the news, but would soon forget again.
Such a great being,
Thought Jumping Mouse.
but he has no memory.
Jumping Mouse went to the center of his new place and was quiet. He listened for a very long time to the beating of his heart. Then suddenly he made up his mind. He scurried back to where the wolf sat and he spoke.
Brother Wolf?
Jumping Mouse said.
Wolf, wolf.
Said the wolf.
Please, Brother Wolf.
Said Jumping Mouse.
Please listen to me. I know what will heal you. It is one of my eyes, and I want to give it to you. You are a greater being than I. I am only a mouse. Please take it.
When Jumping Mouse stopped speaking, his eye flew out of his head, and the wolf was made whole. Tears fell down the cheeks of the wolf. But his little brother could not see them, for now he was blind.
You're a great brother.
Said the wolf.
For now I have my memory, but now you're blind. I am the guide into the sacred mountains. I will take you there. There is a great medicine lake there, the most beautiful lake in the world. All the world is reflected there. The people, the lodges of the people, and all the beings of the prairies and skies.
Skies.
Guys.
Please take me there.
Jumping Mouse said. The wolf guided him through the pines to the medicine lake. Jumping Mouse drank the water from the lake. The wolf described the beauty to him.
I must leave you here,
said Wolf.
For I must return so that I may guide others, but I will remain with you as long as you like.
Thank you, my brother.
Said Jumping Mouse.
But although I am frightened to be alone, I know you must go so that you may show others the way to this place.
Jumping Mouse sat there trembling in fear. It was no use running, for he was blind, but he knew an eagle would find him here. He felt a shadow on his back and heard the sound that eagles make. He braced himself for the shock, and the eagle hit. Jumping Mouse went to sleep. Then he woke up. The surprise of being alive was great, but now he could see. Everything was blurry, but the colors were beautiful.
I can see,
said Jumping Mouse over again and again. A blurry shape came toward Jumping Mouse. Jumping Mouse squinted hard, but the shape remained a blur. I think it's frog. Why don't you read it, Mary?
Okay. Hello, brother.
A voice said.
Do you want some medicine?
Some medicine for me?
Asked Jumping Mouse.
Yes, yes.
Then crouch down as low as you can
The voice said.
and jump as high as you can.
Jumping Mouse did as he was instructed. He crouched as low as he could and jumped. The wind caught him and carried him higher.
Do not be afraid.
The voice called to him.
Hang on to the wind and trust.
Jumping Mouse did. He closed his eyes and hung on to the wind, and it carried higher and higher. Jumping Mouse opened his eyes, and they were clear. And the higher he went, the clearer they became. Jumping Mouse saw his old friend upon a lily pad on the beautiful Medicine Lake. It was the frog.
You have a new name.
Called the frog.
You are Eagle.
Now, how did that happen?
There we go.
Wow.
Pretty charming story, huh?
Yeah, it is.
Nice.
Now, if only people could interact that way and help each other.
I think we do a lot of that all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we very often give away our eyes while we're still alive. That's pretty remarkable. Uh, um, it does say something about that lowliest of creatures, the little tiny mouse, was able to be of such service with creatures so much greater than himself, and also that he was the one who was able to transform into the eagle.
Mhm.
Oh.
I was amazed at the very beginning of the story about how the other mice wouldn't listen to him. You know, and we have prophets all through our lives, all through the centuries, who tell us things and we don't believe them, or we don't give them the time of day. And so that to me was something that really resonated.
Yeah. I was reminded of Plato's story of the allegory of the cave, where people are shackled down in a cave, and they're chained to a wall, and all they can do is look at this play of shadow puppets upon the wall that they are facing. And that's all they can do, is watch these puppets and the dramas that these puppets are playing out. And so their whole lives consist of chattering to each other about what's happening in the story going on with these shadow puppets who have no reality, but to the people chained inside the cave, that's all there is. So they think those are real, which reminds me a lot of what we end up watching all the time and assign a lot of reality to. And then somebody finally manages to break loose, realizes that they're in chains, and they're able to get out of the chains, and they make their way out of the cave. And at first they're blinded by the light, and then gradually they begin to have their eyes adjust to it, and they see what the real world looks like. And they become determined to go back into the cave to let the people down there know, come on, you don't have to be chained in the back of this cave anymore. Come up to the light. And they want nothing to do with him when he goes back down. they don't believe that there's anything besides the shadow figures on the wall, and they certainly don't believe there's such a thing as light and another real world above there to go to. So yeah, I think that we do have stories throughout history and probably in our everyday lives about not believing there's something greater. When somebody goes and visits it, but they don't listen. Maybe I should say we don't listen.
Now, what should we do with the symbolism of the eagle? I admit I did go to Jonathan's forum, and a woman gave a very long, very complicated presentation, which she really researched. But you know, we can go from, well, it's a nice story, but what's significant or importance does a symbol like the eagle or the little mouse convey to us?
Great question. Judy? Nice
So,
to have you, Judy. Thanks for joining.
yes, I was in that other presentation and was very impressed by our Canadian friend Laura, who also ended with saying that the eagle kind of watches over Canada, but I hope they watch over us too. The eagle, of course, is a symbol of transcendence. It's also, Germany uses the eagle, der schwarze Adler, the black eagle, as a symbol of the Christ as well, and that the idea of that which transcends everything. And I think it's most important that can fly higher than any bird, can fly over the clouds. And one moment in my life, which was extremely important existential decision when I was 15 years old, I remember having been so depressed about high school and the way I was treated there and getting bullied and having my parents divorced and very depressing situation. And I had even thought about killing myself. And I remember going on a tri-highway pack trip, and my boyfriend and I, a fellow named Robert Hunter, who later wrote the lyrics for the Grateful Dead, he was a rebel but a genius. We decided to climb up about 1,000 feet from our encampment in the Sierras up to a higher point. And he said, "Can you make it up there?" I said, "Oh, yes, I'm a Girl Scout leader. I can make it." So we went all the way up there, and I remember we could look down on the clouds. And I just remember feeling completely transformed by this experience. And so did Robert. And I knew I was going to have to go back to that high school and the struggle with the bullies and the horrible dean of women and the horrible PE teachers and who didn't like me being too athletic and other things and the AIQ tests and everything else, but something about looking down on the clouds. I thought I can do anything, I can make it. And things were much different the next year for me. So I think there's something about the symbolism of the eagle who can soar above the clouds, above the rain, that we have to, if we realize that all these animal beings are a part of us and that their powers are because of us and we can replicate their powers. Of course, now we can only fly because of the machine we built, the rockets and the planes. And yet within us is that ability to soar, above our own physical limitations or whatever mental limitations that we think we have. And that, at any rate, that was a transforming experience for me, just being in the mountains and
Yeah.
later seeing eagles, especially in the state of Washington, was a wonderful experience. And my friend Ginny Sereni, who is known through Renee, and she's been to the lodge She also was recently out at Lake Nacimiento, and an eagle visited her for about a half hour on her porch, and he stayed. And Janice is like that. She seems to attract all these animal beings, and maybe because she's Native American, I don't know.
Hmm,
But there's
amazing.
anyway, I'm
Thank
sure.
you, Judy. That's quite a remarkable life story that you shared. I have something I want to comment about it, and I want to call on Diana in the meantime.
I was thinking about the journey, and that sometimes we hear a calling that no one else hears when we listen deeply, and that Mouse went and found what it was and had a glimpse, and he wanted to come back and share it with the people that I've experienced this. This is a new way of seeing and being, and yet he wasn't supported, and people said, "Oh, you're crazy." And then he went off on his own, and I think for our personal journeys, what it sometimes is that we have to let go of how we see things, giving our eyes away so that we can let divine light come through and continuing the journey. He was really scared, and there's a Shiro's journey that you start the journey, and then you go cross the threshold, and you go into the supreme ordeal, and then you find your inner wisdom, and it's kind of like that. The Mouse really listened deeply to his calling, and he was willing to give himself away and not pursue that, to be kind and one with everyone else. And then he continued, even though he was scared, and he was helped along the way, but he ultimately had to do it himself. And it's like when he let go of the old way of seeing, he could actually see a new perspective. And I think that's our journey, that when we let go of the way we see things, we may not lose our sight, but we do lose our sight because we can see things from a different perspective. And that the journey does call us to go into those scary places and to let go of our ways of wounded stories and things that we have thought were the truth, and realize that there's a different way to be. And like Carolyn said, if we could live, that we would give to others in that way. But for me, it's an allegory of how we journey in this life. And I think it's constant. I think that the practice of continuing to see from the new perspective, it's very easy to get drawn back into the old culture and the old way of seeing and the old habits. And I think it really takes continued practice to find ways that we can touch our spirits so that we can let go of that and see it in a new perspective. So I thought it was a wonderful story, and I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure, Renee, were you going to speak? I was going to mention that your story, Judy, of ascending above the clouds after you were in such a state of terrible depression and inner turmoil, no doubt. Judy, are you still able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it brought to mind how all the way through this story, the little mouse, before and after he became even jumping mouse, was afraid, was frightened. And when you and Carolyn were asking, well, what is the symbolism of the eagle? After jumping mouse ascended and became eagle, one gets the sense, and he's, able to soar above the clouds, he had lost his fear. And that is part of the symbolism of the eagle, is this fearlessness, this courage. So that I can imagine, Judy, that once you had been able to take that higher perspective, and you knew and you deliberately chose to go back down through the clouds, back down into that horrible seeming high school, there was a certain fearlessness that you brought with you. Like you had already been through probably the worst of what they had to deal out to you, one hopes. But you went back with a different feeling. It seemed to me you didn't go back with the same trembling and quaking of fear. And so I can imagine you didn't attract it to yourself as much anymore either. I think you went with a courageousness that's going to have a tendency to kind of repel those negative energies of attack coming to you. Was that your experience in real life?
Well, yes, that's very perceptive of you. It also was very helpful to Robert, who later had to break away from a dominant stepfather to go and be a poet, which he was. And he had to drop out of college and run. And he ran to the Grateful Dead, who had a lot of problems with drugs, but they did have the genius of music. But for me, I can't say I had been afraid my sophomore year as high school, but I had a perception of myself more as a mouse, that I'm
Mhm.
a girl, and I was an athletic and intellectual girl, which is fatal in the 1950s. So I was getting bullied all the time, and the dean of women said to me, "Well, you are different, dear. What do you expect?" Well, very helpful, supportive, and we kept getting IQ tested all the time, and I hated it. I just hated it. All these teenagers competing with each other because of Professor Terman in Stanford, may he rest in peace. But I do say that my junior year, and I was still in the band and orchestra, and we had a great bandmaster. He told me I was playing my clarinet much better, and I loved to play the double eagle march. The boys would bring in the flags, and there's a new puppet.
Yeah.
So it did help me to go camping like that in the wilderness with the Tri-High Y. There were 6 boys and 6 girls, and we had a great time together. I think this couple who were our leaders were extremely patient because we were just horrid teenagers. Yes,
Uh,
we had a
let
petty.
me ask Dustin, from having played this part of Little Mouse, Jumping Mouse, Eagle, what was your experience of the story, and how does it relate to anything you may have experienced in your lifetime?
Yeah, that was a fun little skit participatory reading story by all of us.
Dramatic reading.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a few things. Great fun little story. I think there was a great symbolism within that storyline that I got. If I look at, and if I recall, sometimes what we associate with a mouse, that can represent meekness. They're considered rodents, or they go after scraps. In some biblical references, they were considered unclean, or part, of a pestilence. And we kind of know mice to be jumpy and scared and sort of hide and run away. And so I saw a symbolism there potentially of fear or doubt or anxiety, insecurity. And on this journey, the eyes of the mouse to me really represent, I think in life, sometimes we have our way of seeing things, and we have a vision of how we see and believe things should be and the way that things should go. Our plan or our picture of the path to where we're trying to get. And so it's interesting that he had to give up the eyes in order to get the help, right? From frog, from buffalo, raccoon, wolf. For me, those creatures represented perhaps great humans, great souls that have come before us. It represents wisdom. It represents the stories that have been told, philosophy. And so I think there's a beautiful story within that in learning, which means giving up of the way that I see things. I'm giving up some of my ego, my plans, in order to embrace and receive the help of some great teachers, great trainings that have come before me. And those teachings can really bring protection during my life journey. They can guide me, they can cover me, protect me, and take me from where I am now to where I'm going next. Right there's a guidance in that, and I think a protection in that. It's also interesting when we look at sort of the beginning and the end of the story, which is a focus on the eagle and how afraid the mouse was of the eagle, of getting to a certain point, and the eagle was going to get him, right? The whole thing was he wanted protection from the very thing which he became. And perhaps it's an example of sometimes we're afraid to take that risk, to take that leap, to really go after our dreams, to really go after what could be, who we could be, the big picture, a movement from the current self or the first self, the lower self, and taking that journey to the higher self. And that can be scary. That path can be scary because it requires a lot of honesty. It requires a lot of self-evaluation. It requires healing. It requires a lot of truth and forgiveness.
And sacrifice.
And sacrifice. Yeah. And so I loved how the very thing which she was so fearful of was that very thing which she was destined to become. I thought that was really, really cool. The story kind of reminded me of a passage from Psalms 23. So I just want to read that. It's a real powerful scripture chapter in Psalms. And it says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies and anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. You have a quote from Isaiah you shared with me that made it into the almanac as well, about the eagle.
Yeah, I think that one is, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They will rise up on the wings of eagles.
Yes, yes. Rise up on the wings of eagles. Yeah. Did other people have the sense that, in a way, each of the characters within the story could be aspects of ourselves? Yeah.
Yes, I had that sense, like as long as you think you're just your physical body, you're a mouse. But it seems if you're willing to give up your physical eye and try to see with the inner eye and use your other greater senses, a mouse has a much greater sense of smell than we do, then perhaps you will go through the transformation. But as long as you think you're just a little person in this little planet down here and don't have any possibilities, or you let other people convince you you're no good or something, then of course things are going to remain not very good for you. But Mouse had the courage of sacrifice and transformation, and that made all the difference. So I think that's a great story. I used to tell a version of it to my students at Cal Poly years ago. So thank you so much for sharing it, and everybody else who participated.
Yes, indeed.
I love that perspective as well. the different aspects of the self. That's a really, another really great insight into that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shirley, can I see if you wanna, if anything has come to mind yet?
Yeah, just listening. I was just questioning or like asking myself, it's if that sacrifice of like, losing your eyes is really necessary, or like changing your perspective to reach that transformation, right? If there's like an easier path, or like not easier, but like fair to get that, like if somebody thought of like a different perspective, it seems like, yeah, everything requires so much sacrifice, when I think like greatness should just come to us. And I don't know, it shouldn't be that hard. So what does experience think about this?
It was interesting to me that his sacrifice was completely unconditional. He didn't expect to get anything out of it at all.
Mhm.
And the first time he didn't get anything out of it. He just had one last eye, so he was a lot more fearful now, being only able to operate with one eye in the world. And yet he sacrificed yet again, just because of his sense of awe of this greater being, that he just like, it just naturally rose up in him that this is the being who should survive. And I don't know that it's such a, well, I use the word should, but I don't know if for Little Mouse it was such a painful thing to do. I mean, he had to really think about it, but his whole heart wanted to do it. I don't think he was conflicted. So maybe that's what makes it the difference. If we can do it just completely wholeheartedly without real conflict, maybe it's not as hard as it seems.
Yeah.
And that's what actually ended up bringing the reward, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep. I
So-
believe.
We have the topic next week of from the Buddhist Paramitas Shila, the virtue of balancing the inner and the outer. And I am very open to suggestions for a speaker for next week. The following week will be the beneficence of karma. And I know that Maurice Bishop is going to be our presenter for that week. Thank you all so very much. It was really a joy to share from the storytelling tradition with all of you, and the Native American tradition. Aloha.
That was wonderful. Aloha.
Yes, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Sharoni.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you. Bye bye.